I think if you're reading through the tea leaves right now, the Seattle Seahawks draft plan is immensely clear. What the Seahawks have been doing throughout the last couple of days, but specifically throughout this morning, has been going after different combine interviews from different players at different position groups. But today, there has been a clear focus on defensive backs, and I'm going to let you know who those defensive backs are on today's video, as well as a couple of edge rushers, but really who I do believe that the Seahawks could potentially take at pick number 32 in the NFL draft. When you look at the photo from last year's draft, you can see the Seahawks absolutely crushed it. Gray Zabel at number 1, man. He was the perfect guard for this offense. Nick Emmanuel-Warren might end up being the best player in the NFL in a year or two. Elijah Arroyo, I think there's plenty of room for him to grow into being a big-time star. Jalen Milroe, hey, look, there's still a lot of time for that guy. It took Sam Darnold quite some time to figure out how to be a great player in the National Football League. Jalen Milroe is going to have some time there. Torrey Horton, when he was healthy, man, that guy was sweet. Robbie Oots is only going to continue to get better. And I didn't forget you, Riley Mills. I saved the best for last because I think he's going to be a premier defensive tackle talent in the National Football League. So clearly, the Seahawks crushed the 2025 draft. If you want the Seahawks to go out and crush the 26 draft class as well, come on in and hit that thumbs up button. I think that the Seahawks are positioning themselves to become the team of the 2020s. They can be the dynasty just like the Patriots were in the early 2000s and kind of in the late 2010s there as well. Seattle can do it. Hit the like button. They're going to crush this draft. Now let's get into those targets. This is Seahawks Today. I am your host, Will Ortner, and the interviews are starting throughout the combine process. Multiple teams are meeting with multiple players every single day, and they're really looking at a multitude of different positions. What I mean by that is teams aren't just going to interview people that they could take in the first round. They're going to interview guys that they could take all the way through the draft, as well as some potential guys that could end up being UDFAs. Now, the Seahawks are making it pretty clear by the position groups that they are interviewing, and they seem to be focusing on who they value and what position they are going to clearly go after in the draft. I think this is really smart for the Seahawks to do because, one, they're clearly creating a board that has in-depth value, and they are going in-depth with these prospects. But more importantly, we can use it to see who the Seahawks are potentially going to be drafting at that pick number 32, as well as the rest of the draft, but also where the Seahawks' priorities are going to be in free agency. Because if the Seahawks have a clear target on a position group when it comes to the draft, probably means they're not going after a free agent. The first position group that I want to take a look at, they went through some of their interviews earlier on this week, and that is the edge rusher position group. And what I'll tell you right now about the edge rushers that the Seahawks talked to, it's clearly a little bit of a smaller number, but it is important to note, and it's important to kind of really dive into with these edge rushers, that is a position group that Seattle needs to get younger with. Right now, the Seahawks, they're a little bit long in the tooth when it comes to that edge rusher room, and if they're going to decide not to re-sign Boye Mafe, it might be smart for the Seahawks to go and target that position at pick number 32. Who those edge rushers were that they talked to, we'll get into in just a moment, but right now, you need to go get your St. Patty's Day gear as fast as you possibly can. That day is rapidly approaching us. We're already in March. Year is going by really freaking fast. You can look at the Seattle drinking team. We got a couple inaugural members. We got the Navy as well as the green. You want to be wearing it so you do not get pinched. Super affordable t-shirt. Only $29.99. Go pick yourself up one today. They're super comfortable. Same material as my Mob Mentality t-shirt right now. It feels great. It feels clean, and I absolutely love it. You go grab yourself one today by going into the comment section or description of today's video. We're going to have that link. You click that link. It'll take you right where you need to go. The first edge rusher that I really want to talk about is Zion Young out of Missouri, and he's someone that the Seahawks made sure that they went out and talked to. Now, Young is the type of player that I find very fascinating. Clearly has a lot of talent, can get after the passer, not afraid to come in and wrap up in the run game as well. He's long, he's strong, and he's the type of player that I do think would have some success in Seattle. When we look at the entire season for Young, it was a season that I would say is very productive, especially for a guy who's coming out of the SEC. It's always important to kind of look at a player and where they are playing their football. Are they playing their football in a conference that is known to be a little bit weaker? Are they playing their football at a conference that is a little bit stronger? Because you can't always just look at the numbers and say, well, hey, a guy had 6.5 sacks. 6.5 sacks in the SEC, that's a lot different than having 6.5 sacks in the GNAC. And no offense to guys who played in the GNAC, but I know the offensive linemen there are not very good because I was one of them. Here is what Young had to say on the Seattle Seahawks in his meeting them.
Oh, yeah. They were crazy. They was swarming the ball for sure. That's how I met with them. It went pretty well.
Young had a very good Senior Bowl, so that has obviously helped drum up some interest in him. He's the type of player that can play both the pass and the run. You're not seeing him focus or specialize in one area of being a defender. I think that's going to be important because Macdonald doesn't want guys who just get after the passer or just stop the run. He's made it very clear he wants guys that can do a multitude of different things, and I think that Young falls into that category. The next guy that we got to talk about, well, he comes from a defensive powerhouse, at least it's been a defensive powerhouse the last little bit, and that's R. Mason Thomas. Now, the kid coming out of Oklahoma is going to be a little bit on the smaller side, not nearly as tall or as long as Young, and that could be something that is important to note, right? I'm not going to be the first guy to tell you that size means everything, because it doesn't. But it is important when we look at some of the measurables in the National Football League for players. There is kind of a blueprint, right? You need to be within these two height ranges. You can't be too tall, can't be too small. You need to be within these weight ranges. You need to run this type of 40, somewhere in this range. And so a guy like R. Mason Thomas, he could be kind of on the smaller end. But when it comes to his production, it's not on the smaller end. Again, he's coming from the SEC, and he's playing for an Oklahoma Sooners defense that was very stinking good this last season. Obviously, it helped get them to the college football playoff. What I find fascinating about R. Mason Thomas is his ability to get after the passer. 6.5 sacks, again, in the SEC, very difficult conference. Obviously, has some less games played there than Young due to different circumstances. What I find fascinating about a guy like R. Mason Thomas is that he's just flat out a baller. It feels like the ball is always around where he's at, and sometimes those are the best football players to have on your team. Now, is he someone that would necessarily go at pick 32? No, that's probably a little bit of a stretch, but there are times where you can see certain players, they come into the combine, they absolutely kill it. They kill it on the pro day. They kill their answers and everything that they need to do. And then all of a sudden, hey, now they're in the first round. Or he could be someone that the Seahawks look at if they decide to trade back, which John Schneider has been known to do, especially since the Seahawks don't have a ton of draft picks for this draft. They could trade back, and now all of a sudden our Mason Thomas kind of falls more into someone that they could take at a later pick that they got because of a trade. Do you want Seattle to draft an edge rusher at pick number 32? Let me know down below in the comment section, yes or no. I've seen it kind of mixed right now, and while I do feel like there's a potential that the Seahawks could go and take someone at 32, I believe that there's a different position group, or I guess two position groups that I've combined to fit my narrative today that are more likely to be taken at pick number 32. And that position group, well, it's defensive backs. I'll tell you right now, when the Seahawks have been interviewing players today, it's like every 5 minutes. The Seahawks have interviewed this safety. The Seahawks have interviewed this corner. The Seahawks have interviewed this corner. This one. There are so many defensive backs that are coming in with the Seattle Seahawks and sitting down and having conversations that it seems pretty clear to me Seattle has a game plan. And we know why they have this game plan. Seattle has a couple of guys that are probably going to leave in free agency, and we're going to dive into it even more in depth on a future video, but we really dove into it in a couple videos previously. But it's clear, Seattle, they need to help rebuild some of the players that they lost because, well, those players, they hit free agency at the right time, and now they become more valuable because they helped a team win a Super Bowl. So they're going to get paid more in free agency. So let's look at some of the different defensive backs that have spoke with the Seattle Seahawks. And we're going to start first with Clemson cornerback Aveion Terrell. And I'll tell you right now, when you look at Terrell, this guy is a baller. Plus, being a baller is in the family tree. A.J. Terrell obviously is the older brother of Aveion. Now, when I look last year at Clemson, the year was a little bit disappointing, but I wouldn't necessarily say that it was disappointing for Terrell. Clearly a guy that is a lockdown type of a corner, not afraid to make tackles. I love that he's got a couple of TFLs in there and a couple of sacks as well. That shows me that he's a guy that isn't afraid to come in and make plays. That is a guy who's not afraid to make tackles. And if you're going to be in the Mike Macdonald defense, you better make tackles. Macdonald likes guys that can play all over the place. Terrell's one of those types of guys. Here's what he had to say on meeting the Seahawks.
Yes, sir. It went good, just the talk we had. I like the organization. I like the defense they run, so it felt good meeting with them.
I love the fit of Terrell in this defense. Now, if he ends up getting all the way to pick number 32, just like in Mel Kiper Jr.'s last mock draft, I believe that's who had him there. If he's able to get all the way to the Seahawks at pick 32, I think that's a home run signing because you're getting a guy you can instantly plug in to this defense, and he's probably going to be a starter. He's also going to fit in the Macdonald system of being able to do a multitude of things, right? Macdonald doesn't want cookie-cutter corners, cookie-cutter safeties, cookie-cutter defensive ends. He wants guys that can do everything, and then he's going to mold his defense around them, just like a ball of clay. I think that we saw Nicky Manwari and Devin Witherspoon really explode in this defense, and I think that Terrell would fit in as well. Next cornerback out of South Carolina, Brandon Cisse, has been absolutely fantastic. And what I think that he can add to this squad, and I was very excited to learn that he had talked with the Seahawks, is that I think he can add in a cornerback that is a true blue corner. What do I mean by that? I mean no one is going to catch the football on him. When we look at his stat line from the 2025 season, again, you're going up against SEC wide receivers. You're going up against players in the SEC that are going to be making big-time plays on Sunday. He is the type of player that can add in an element to this defense that it hasn't had so far, and that is someone that doesn't allow catches. The ball doesn't get caught around him. Seattle does a great job of doing a multitude of different things with their defensive backs, but I wouldn't say that they have that true blue, hey, the ball's never going to be caught on this guy. I think there is a potential for a guy like Brandon Cisse to be able to do that. Here's what he had to say on meeting the Seahawks.
So I actually played 7-on-7 with Nick in high school. I was at the NFC Championship when they played the Rams to go watch them. So it was actually one of the best environments I've seen in a long time. So, yeah, I've seen the Seahawks. I studied their defense. Yes, I have. It went great. Awesome. One of my favorite ones. Can I talk to Nick at all about it? Oh, yes, I talked to him a few days ago. So, yeah, we keep in contact about weekly. We keep in contact. He's a good friend of mine.
He'd add an absolutely terrifying element to this Seahawks defense, and that is a player that would be able to shut down some of the top wide receivers in the National Football League. Now, I'm not saying that the Seahawks don't have corners and safeties, other defensive backs that can't do those things, but Seattle has shown more of an emphasis on guys that are able to do a multitude of different things. They can play in the slot. They can play on the outside. Tell you right now, if you can get an SEC corner that plays the way that he does, hard to pass up on. If Terrell's not there, might be my number 2 option. Make sure that you hit that sub button. We're going to have you covered for any of the news going on with the Seattle Seahawks. News continues to just flood in. It doesn't stop. We're going to have you covered on the latest news as well as the latest rumors surrounding the Seattle Seahawks because the Combine, to me, it's the unofficial start of the season. You're already seeing trades get kind of finalized before they can be really finalized. And you're going to want to make sure you don't want to miss out on any of that information. So hit that sub button. Next defensive back that we need to talk about is Colton Hood from Tennessee. What I find fascinating about Colton Hood is he's the type of player that doesn't just stop, right? He is not afraid to take risks. He is going to play with his hair on fire. And he is the type of player, again, another SEC product, that isn't afraid to make tackles. When we look at the stat line for him in the 2025 year, 4.5 TFLs is always going to stand out to me and is important because of the way that Macdonald wants to run this defense. The other thing that I want to talk about is the amount of tackles. The old adage with cornerback was they keep wide receivers from catching the football because They don't want to have to make tackles. If a wide receiver catches the ball, they're not very good at it. That is not something that is going to fall around with Colton Hood. I was very impressed with his season over at Tennessee. Obviously, there were some defensive issues and injuries with that squad. Hood, he just picked up right where he needed to be, and he played very well for that squad. He would be someone that I'd be very intrigued about the Seahawks adding in. Next guy that I want to talk about, I know that the Seahawks met with him, and this would be another player that would kind of fit more into the R. Mason Thomas role of, hey, the Seahawks, they end up trading back from pick number 32 and look at potentially adding this guy later on, and that is Kamari Ramsey, the safety out of USC. What I find fascinating about Ramsey, again, stop me if you've heard this before, he's the type of guy that can play a multitude of different positions. He can come in and be a safety. If you need him to be a slot corner, he can fill that role as well. He is a player that is not going to just do one thing. He's going to do a multitude of different things, a jack of all trades, if you will. When you look at the last season that he had at USC, obviously I know he's in the Big Ten, so the passing attack isn't necessarily going to be superb against him. Big Ten more so known for running the football. But I will say he went up against some pretty darn good quarterbacks this last year. Dante Moore is going to be the one that really sticks out to me. And I thought that Ramsey had a pretty darn good year, and he had a pretty darn good game against Dante Moore. He can do a bunch of different things, just like I said. He's a guy who can play either safety position, depending on how you want to run that defense against that specific matchup. You can use him inside in the slot if you need him at a nickel or in a dime. Those are things that he can add into as well. So again, another target for the Seahawks, having met with them earlier today. But it is important to note with a guy like Kamari Ramsey that he would not be taken more than likely at pick number 32. He would be the type of guy that Seattle would trade 32 and pick later on. Next guy that we want to talk about, this is maybe the most fascinating player in this draft, and that's Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, the safety out of Toledo. When you hear, oh, who's the guy that everyone's talking about out of Toledo? It's this guy. He has been unbelievable on my Twitter timeline right now. This whole week, all I've seen are his highlights. The kid can flat out ball. He's not afraid to make tackles. He can make big-time interceptions. People don't catch the football around him. He gets TFLs. He's a freak. He can do everything. He is a slightly, I don't want to say worse version, but there are comparisons to Nick Emmanuel-Warren for a reason. That's the type of player that he is. So do not be shocked if Seattle goes and makes a play for him and they do try to interview him. Now, what's important to note is at the time of this recording, he has not interviewed with Seattle yet at the Combine. He was asked at his press conference about what it would be like to play with Seattle or what he thought about Seattle, and this is what he had to say.
Yeah, Seahawks defense, man, they defense went crazy this year. I feel like they got a lot of versatile around the whole field. They can play anywhere they want to play. Just seeing them play fast and physical means everything. I feel like I can fit in with them.
I'm a prisoner of the Twitter timeline right now, but I'll tell you what, he would ball the F out in Seattle. That guy is a freak. It is important to note, and I did mention this as well, there's a difference between a guy who's playing for Toledo in the MAC and a guy who's playing at Tennessee or Alabama or Georgia or Oregon or Ohio State or Michigan and playing in the Big Ten and in the SEC. It's also important to note that when your tape jumps off the page like his does, how can you not be excited about him? I would be surprised if Seattle did not at least have a conversation with McNeil-Warren. I'll tell you right now, he's a guy that I think could be a similar version to a Nick Emmanuel-Warren. And you might say to yourself, well, we already have a Nick Emmanuel-Warren on the team. But I got to listen to a fantastic interview by Hawk Blogger with Mike Macdonald, and in that interview, he said that he was not afraid to have a bunch of different guys like Nick Emmanuel-Warren on the team. I would say he's got two already. Nick Emmanuel-Warren, Devin Witherspoon. Maybe he's about to add a third. What player do you want the Seahawks to take at pick number 32? Let me know down below in the comment section. Ton of news coming in so far from the Combine. Very excited to see what players really come in and pop when it comes to the different Combine workouts. Very excited to see who the Seahawks could be targeting and who the Seahawks could potentially take. Thank you guys so much for viewing today's video. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button. We always love getting content out to you as fast as possible. Make sure you hit that sub button. We're going to have a PM video that goes out later today. You're not going to want to miss out on that because I already have stories that I need to get to you that I couldn't report in this video because it would have just been like 4 hours long. So you're not going to want to miss that later video as well. The best way not to miss it is by hitting that sub button. Thank you guys so much for viewing today's show. Can't wait to see you next time.